So 2 days ago, right after our Tuesday episode, Amy Coney Barrett testified before Congress about her concerns about threats to her family and her personally, to the point where she's had to wear bulletproof vest. So here is the clip of her testifying before Congress, airing those complaints.
How the threats have affected me and my family personally. They have required me my children to think about and see things that children should not have to see or think about. One example is when threats to my life were particularly intense a few years ago, around the time of the Dobbs leak. My security detail sent me home with a bulletproof vest, and I carried it into my house, put it into my bedroom, dropped it down on a table, turned around, and my 12-year-old son was standing in the doorway of my bedroom, and he wanted to know what it was and why I had it, and I didn't know how to respond because maybe I lack imagination, but I didn't expect that performing this service was going to put me in the position of explaining to my children what a bulletproof vest was and why I had to wear one. It's also been reported in the news that roughly 6 weeks ago, I was the victim of a swatting incident. At that point, one of my teenage sons, opened the door to go out with friends and saw in our street, it was full of police cars, who had responded to a false report of gunshots and raised voices in my home. I was very, very grateful that I had Supreme Court police outside my home because they were able to stop and meet with and explain to the county police that it had been a false alarm, and so the police did not actually attempt to enter our home. Many of us, me included, have received threatening anonymous deliveries designed to intimidate and harass us. They are often sent in the name of Judge Salas's son, who I think, as you mentioned in the beginning, Mr. Chairman, is deceased because he was killed by a disgruntled lawyer who showed up at Judge Salas's home intending to kill her, but her son, 20 years old at the time, opened the door and took the bullet instead. Her husband, standing behind, was seriously injured. So I think the message on these deliveries being sent in his name is clear. As Justice Kagan said, federal judges across the country, throughout the judiciary, including the Supreme Court, continue to do their jobs without fear or favor, but the threat level is really high.
So, lots to unpack there, but mainly she says, I had no idea it would get to the point where I have to explain to my 12-year-old son what a bulletproof vest is. And what did you think this was, lady? With all due respect, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, what did you think politics was? Politics is not, we all get in a room, we all hold hands, kumbaya, we're all going to get along. No, politics is dirty, it's messy, it is literally war. It's a proxy for war in times of peace. And it is, by nature, masculine. It's by nature violent. It's an exercise of violence. And Amy Coney Barrett just thinks that, oh yeah, like, I'll just be a justice, it's all good. No, like, things are getting worse in America. But politics has always been very messy and violent. Think about all the assassination attempts on previous presidents. Think about the assassination attempts and the violent attacks against congressmen all throughout American history. Because politics decides the direction and the fate of the country. So those who will impose their will do so, and those who are unhinged will find ways to do so no matter what. So this is where we talk about how women, of course, we're talking generalities here. Well, women have the survival instincts of a goldfish, especially if they're liberal. But by their very nature, because women are conformist, and because we live in a liberal hegemonic culture, women will naturally just become left-wing and center-left because the left controls all our cultural and educational institutions. So therefore, they will be lefty. But because of that, they have literally the survival instincts of a goldfish. We talked about last week of the woman who moved to Ireland with her migrant boyfriend and she got killed by him. These are the same women who scream about how they feel unsafe, yet they will sign petitions and vote for letting out violent criminals onto the streets and flooding America and flooding their countries with third world migrants that come from countries that have actually normalized rape cultures. And so Amy Coney Barrett thinks that she can come into becoming a justice and, oh, it'll be all kumbaya. There'll be no threats to her life whatsoever. It's like, what did you think this was? And on top of that, the irony of Amy Coney Barrett coming in and saying, we need a security. Thank you for security. We need more security because the threats to my family and my personal life has increased. Yet she has no problem ruling on allowing for migrants to come into America and have Chinese birth tourism and foreign birth tourism be the law of the land. And so you see that women, by and large, cannot see things on a macro scale. For her as a principal conservative, not only insofar as it affects her in her personal life, where, hey, something has to change, it affects me in my personal life, but she can't think about it in the abstract for everyone else in the country. This is why women are very, very relational, and they're very, very anecdotal, and that's fine, but it doesn't scale to politics and governance in this country and in any society. So you think about women in power. Women have always been in power in any nation, not at its zenith, not at its pinnacle, but at its decline. Every single time in recorded history, when women got involved in politics or got into power, it was always during the decline or contributing to the decline of a great society or a great civilization. Every single time. Now contrast Amy Coney Barrett. Her testifying before Congress saying that she's scared, she needs more security, it's not right that she's gotten swatting attacks, swatting incidents, that her children need to experience this. Contrast that with Clarence Thomas when he was being confirmed into the Supreme Court to replace Thurgood Marshall.
I'd rather die than withdraw. If they're going to kill me, they're going to kill me.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process. Not for the purpose of serving on the Supreme Court, but for the purpose of not being driven out of this process. I would not be scared. I don't like bullies. I've never run from bullies. I never cry uncle, and I'm not going to cry uncle today, whether I want to be on the Supreme Court or not.
That's Clarence Thomas, everyone. A quintessential American patriot. That I'd rather die than withdraw from this process. If they're going to kill me, they're going to kill me. And not because he wanted so badly and he hungered and lusted for power. No, because he said, I will not let bullies get their way. So contrast Amy Coney Barrett with Clarence Thomas. Who do you think will be an effective justice, one of the most powerful judges and the most powerful judge in the whole country? The top court of the land? Yeah, who's going to be a better justice, you think? One who is deterred by threats or one who is not deterred by threats? And if you just see the juxtaposition between Amy Coney Barrett and Clarence Thomas, you see that Amy Coney Barrett, for her, she voted with conservatives 80+% of the time before the Dobbs decision. And then after the Dobbs decision, because the threats and the violence in her life has increased, she has only sided with conservatives 50% of the time, only half of the time, post Dobbs v. Jackson. So Amy Coney Barrett is sending a message to the left wing in this country, to the radicals, and saying, yeah, your threats on my life work. Political violence works. You're getting away with it because I'm scared, and I will do your bidding. Versus Clarence Thomas, who says, no. And I assure you, Clarence Thomas has plenty of death threats on his life, plenty of swatting incidents, plenty of threats and violence lodged at him and his family. Yet you don't see him whining before Congress because he understands strength. And these virtues of valor, of strength, of honor, these are all masculine virtues that women cannot embody because they're not designed to. And so you might think, oh, Amy Coney Barrett is such a coward. Actually, I don't think so. Because she is being a good woman by acquiescing to threats of violence and authority. But that doesn't make her a good justice. It makes her a normal woman, but doesn't make her a good justice. So I want to go through, then, what's that takeaway? Oh, look at Brett Kavanaugh, coward and fear too. Yeah, and that's why we call it out. Because men who are cowards, because we hold men to a standard to be courageous, to be bold. Women should not be held to that same standard because women are not men. Women are not meant to fight on the front lines of battle and die and sacrifice themselves on behalf of men. That is the duty and the responsibility of men. Women are to be nurturing, to be gentle and quiet in spirit, like it says in 1 Peter 3. That's not the expectation we give to women, rightfully so. But then we give all the privileges to women and none of the responsibilities, while we give all the responsibilities to men without any of the privileges. Then what do you think is going to happen? We're going to have a very dysfunctional society. So women should not be judges, and by extension, women should not be in politics. Why? Because it's in their very design not to be someone who can exercise violence. Like I mentioned, politics is an exercise of violence. What does the government do? Romans 13, the government exists to promote good and restrain and punish evil. How do you restrain and punish evil? You think evildoers are just sitting around, kumbaya, clapping their hands, playing chess, eating chips? No, like the evildoers are the rapists, they're the serial murderers, they're the psychopaths. So in order to restrain them and punish them, there needs to be an exercise of violence. And that's what the civil magistrate does. But if women are not designed for that, then how are we supposed to hold them accountable or responsible for their exercise of violence? And they can't. And so that's the problem. We live in a society, a very dysfunctional society, where we give all the power to women who cannot be held accountable nor be responsible for exercising violence. And this is why, hence, we have a very disorderly and chaotic society where criminals get let loose because they're of a certain oppressed class and because of the suicidal empathy of women. And meanwhile, those who are just, those who are upright and noble, they get punished for exercising justice. Now, there's a Supreme Court case way back when, Bradwell versus Illinois. And this case was brought by a woman named Mira Bradwell, who sought to be admitted to the bar to practice law in Illinois. And back then, it was illegal, of course. And there's a lot that was said with all the justices. And of course, they ruled 8-1 to not allow her to be a lawyer in Illinois. But Justice Joseph Bradley had to say this in his opinion. And I think it encapsulates very well why women should not be justices. So he says here, it certainly cannot be affirmed as a historical fact that this has ever been established as one of the fundamental privileges and immunities of the sex. On the contrary, the civil law, as well as nature herself, has always recognized a wide difference in the respective spheres and destinies of man and woman. Man is, or should be, woman's protector and defender. The natural, proper timidity and delicacy which belongs to the female sex evidently unfits it for many of the occupations of civil life. The constitution of the family organization, which is founded in the divine ordinance, as well as in the nature of things, indicates the domestic sphere as that which properly belongs to the domain and functions of womanhood. The harmony, not to say identity, of interest and views which belong or should belong to the family institution is repugnant to the idea of a woman adopting a distinct and independent career from that of her husband. So firmly fixed was the sentiment in the founders of common law that it became a maxim of that system of jurisprudence that a woman had no legal existence separate from her husband, who was regarded as her head and representative in the social state. And notwithstanding some recent modifications of the civil status, many of the special rules of law flowing from and dependent upon this cardinal principle still exist in full force in most states. One of these is that a married woman is incapable, without her husband's consent, of making contracts which shall be binding on her or him. This very incapacity was one circumstance which the Supreme Court of Illinois deemed important in rendering a married woman incompetent to fully perform the duties and trusts that belong to the office of attorney and counselor. So move down a little bit more. And so we'll read this last part right here. It is true that many women are unmarried and not affected by any of the duties, complications, and incapacities arising out of the married state. But these are exceptions to the general rule. The paramount destiny and mission of women are to fulfill the noble and benign offices of wife and mother. This is the law of the Creator. And the rules of civil society must be adapted to the general constitution of things and cannot be based upon exceptional cases. I don't think I need to add anything more. That's exactly it. And this is what Christians and conservatives need to understand. It's not that we want to oppress women. It's not that women can be justices. They just shouldn't be because scripture just says so. No, it is the divine ordinance. It is the law of the creator. It is in our very design. The telos of woman is not to be a leader, a protector, a soldier, a warrior. The divine telos, the design and the end goal of woman is to birth new life, to be nurturing, to be submissive to her husband. And then the role of the man, the design of the man is to take that responsibility of being the head of his wife and to love her well, to lead her with honesty and integrity, with love, with generosity and charity, to be protective and strong and courageous. That's what it is. And all of society for thousands of years understood this very basic principle. But somehow in the hubris of modernity, we think that we can throw it all out. But it is in the design. It is not just a mere, it's just not social arbitration. It's not arbitrary rules that's placed to men and women because, that's just how it is. So just blindly obey it. No, it's in our very design. It's how we're wired mentally, psychologically, physiologically, biologically. I remember one time I arm wrestled my mom in high school. And this was before I worked out. I was like stick skinny. Now I'm a little pudgy right now. But I arm wrestled my mom in high school just because I was like, hey, this might be fun. I want to test my strength. And as a kid growing up, of course, I was disciplined by my mom. And I respected her authority, but I arm wrestled her. And this is without me working out, nothing. I beat her it was so easy. I didn't even need to try. You see those videos of the average Joe doing strength competitions against women, like female bodybuilders and weightlifters. And the average Joe always wins. It is in our very design. We're not Gnostics as Christians. We don't believe that our mind and our soul is separate from our body. No, it's all one. So God has created male and female so differently. Men and women are different. And so we serve different functions, not because God just said, oh, well, that's just how it's going to be. It's not just the arbitration of men who want to control and oppress women. It's literally in our design. And the very nature of the very fact that men were able to control and oppress women, which is obviously, I don't even want to accept that framework. But even if we're going to accept that framework and that line of reasoning that men oppressed women, how are they able to oppress women? If women and men are equal, if we're all equal, then how were men able to oppress women for thousands of years? It's because men are more powerful. Men are stronger. Men are more capable, by and large, as a general rule. And so because of that, the goal should not be to dismantle the patriarchy because you can't actually dismantle it by nature, like through natural law and by natural law, you can't dismantle the patriarchy because men are, by and large, stronger and in many regards, when it comes to resource extraction, when it comes to innovation, technology, upholding infrastructure. Who are the people upholding all that? It's men who are doing the dangerous jobs that lets society and keeps society running. It's men. So if men collectively said, actually, no, woman, we're going to take away your rights, what are you going to do? Like, women can't do anything. And so the goal should be men to do good to women, to treat them with respect and honor and dignity. And that shouldn't be a controversial take. And also, Justice Bradley said in his opinion that we of course consider the women who are an exception to the rule, but that is what they are, an exception. And we can't change all the rules and we can't change all of society, the constitution of the general state, social state, in order to accommodate the exception. Because the law of averages exists and it is undefeated. Once you start to change your institution and your standards and your rules to accommodate the rare exception, what happens as a result? That exception becomes the norm and it destroys and deteriorates any semblance of goodness and order we had in society. The same thing with immigration in America. Oh, we were just going to give and bring in the best and brightest. Okay, now we have tens of millions of third worlders who hate America occupying every single part of America, where now Americans have become a minority or are becoming increasingly a minority. They said the same thing with no-fault divorce. No-fault divorce is supposed to be this way for oppressed women to get out of unhealthy marriages. And as a result, now almost 50% of all marriages end in divorce in America, with the majority of them being initiated by women who are hypergamous and opportunistic. We cannot change society to accommodate all of the exceptions. We can have exceptions to the exceptions, right? We can have accommodations for the exception, but to change the rule and to change all of society to accommodate the exception is preposterous, and it destroys your country. And so, yes, the natural state of things is that women will get married. And we can have room in society for non-married women to be a part of social and civic life. But by and large, most women will get married and they want to get married. That's literally what they're wired to do, to have children, to be loved and protected by a man. Every woman loves this. That's why every woman loves a Cinderella story. They all love a K-drama story. Every woman wants this. Even the most lip-hearted women, they all want this. I've talked to tons of feminists, and they say secretly that they actually genuinely want a strong, protective man. Every woman wants this. This is in your biology. It's in your design. So that's all you need to say. That's all you need. It's in creation. It's in the design. It's in the divine ordinance. It's the law of the creator that we are different. We need to get rid of and topple the idol of egalitarianism that says that men and women are men and women are the same, because we are different in so many ways. And of course, we are all same in that, right? We're the same in that we're image bearers of God. We all have a sin nature, and we need to be redeemed by Christ. Sure, we all need to eat food. We all poop. I mean, maybe girls don't poop. I don't know. But aside from that, like, if you look at scripture, there are so many different commandments and expectations placed on men versus women. It is in our design. And how do we know? Well, look at this study. So this is a study that was conducted in 2006, and there's tons of studies that show this and corroborate the findings of the study. But this fascinating finding on how male and female empathy differs from a 2006 Nature study by Dr. Tanya Singer and colleagues. Study participants played a prisoner's dilemma game with two actors who either played fairly or unfairly. Later, the participants watched those same actors receive mild electric shocks to the back of the hand. Their brain activity was recorded using fMRI as they observed the pain. Both male and female participants felt empathy, pain areas lit up, when they witnessed fair actors getting shocked. But for the unfair actors, female participants still showed empathy when witnessing the cheaters get zapped. In men, the empathy vanished and reward centers fired instead. The men actually got a dopamine hit from seeing the guilty punished. This difference between men and women may explain why women often jump to defend criminals and fraudsters like the Somali daycare scammers and illegal immigrants, while men often feel zero sympathy and actually enjoy seeing the guilty face consequences. It's in our design. Literally, women, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of whether it's justified or not, they will look at any act of violence and they will side with those who are where the violence is being enacted upon. That's why we had the video in Italy where the African migrant was, excuse my French, but jerking off in front of everyone on the beach. And then so what did a lot of Italian men do? Well, they jumped him, because you don't do that in front of children and women. And then what did the woman do? The woman protected the African migrant. You see this in every instance. For example, there was a female cop in the UK very recently where she saw a white man attacking a black man, but the black man actually was attacking the white man first. So the only thing she saw was the white man attacking in self-defense, and therefore she arrested the white man. Women are emotional. They're wired to be so. And that's not a bad thing. It's a bad thing, and it's disordered when it's placed in areas of society that God did not ordain. Women are not meant for politics. This is why everyone knows this too. When men and women are in a relationship, when you have a girlfriend or a wife, like she's telling you a problem that she's having or going through, men is always like, okay, but here's the solution is so clear. Why don't you just do this? And then how do women react to that? They get mad because they don't want a solution. They just want to be heard and to be seen and to be loved. Okay, that's not a bad thing, right? But it's like every single dating relationship I had has been like this. They would complain about a problem they're having in a church or in a friendship or in their family. And I just say, yeah, why don't you just talk to them? Or why don't you just say this? Or, hey, have you tried doing it this way? And then they always got mad at me. They're like, that's not the point. Why don't you just listen to me? I'm like, oh, sorry. But why is that the case? Everyone understands this is true. Why? Because men and women are wired differently. And women are not wired biologically and physiologically to see justice. And they are so emotionally wired. And if it's only through their lens and their framework that they can judge anything. This is why women being a part of the jury, women being judges, it's actually very, very harmful because they are not as impartial as men are. They're very partial because they are much more emotional. And again, that doesn't make them inferior or lesser than men, but it does make them unfit for positions of authority and especially adjudicating cases and the law. Like you see all the memes too, right? It's like, oh, men are taller than women, or like, oh, women are shorter than men. You make this generalization. How do every single woman act? And like nearly every single woman says, oh, but I know a woman who's taller than my brother. Oh, the average height of women is 5'4". But I'm 5'6". If it's not in their purview and from their direct perspective and personal experience, they cannot understand the world. And of course, there are exceptions to this. There's great thinkers. There are incredible female writers. And I'm not discounting them. But what I am saying, this is the general rule because women are wired this way. Why? Because they're wired to not be truly rational, but emotional. Because how do you raise children? Sometimes you can't be rational. And when you're trying to understand, hey, why is my 1-year-old crying? I can't communicate. She can't speak. I have to figure out how to put them to bed, stop them crying. And then women, by and large, figure it out while men struggle and men don't know what to do. So in the right place, in the proper place, yes, the biology and the psychology of women is a very beneficial, awesome, glorious thing. But it is not meant for public civic life. So, there's actually a name named Francis Parkman. He's an American historian. He writes a lot about this. And here's some of the points that he makes, which is, I think this is where we're going to end on, that politics ultimately rests on coercive force, right? And then so when you have all throughout society, you always had distinctions and categories of people and organization of society, but mainly, at least throughout society, other than men and women, parents and children, you had the distinction between combatants and non-combatants in society. So combatants are the ones who fight on the front lines, whether foreign or even domestic, where they're trying to enact the change that they want to see done. And then you have the non-combatants. This is why everyone also says this, and everyone understands this, that it is, no one gets sad when men die in war. No one does. But they what do they always say? It's women and children die. Women and children were killed. Women and children are being killed in Gaza. Women and children are being killed in Ukraine. No one cares about the men. And I'm not even saying that's like a bad thing. Like you should still care about the men who died, so have empathy for them. But the reason why everyone understands that it is a greater tragedy that women and children die because they are non-combatants, and the combatants in society are men. And so women have always been the non-combatants and included in the non-combatants, and men have been the combatants, which is why they have been the ones to fight in war and also exercise power and force through politics. And men and women have different but complementary civic functions rather than identical political roles. Women's influence over family and society should be weakened, would be weakened by direct participation in party politics, which is what we see. Every single female politician, think about Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Kristi Noem, every single boss babe female politician, what happens? They cheat on their husbands. They're not a good mother. They're not present for their family. So it's true. Their influence and their just being a good mother, that function is deterred by the participation of women in politics. And also, the majority of women didn't even desire the quote unquote right to vote. Remember, only 4% of women at the time of suffrage wanted the right to vote. And expanding suffrage would change the nature of government without producing corresponding benefits. But what all it really comes down to is that politics is the exercise of power, of force, and of violence. The government itself, that's what it is. It is the authority that the people allow and give deference to, enact force in order to enact order and enforce the law in society. So voting is not just merely expressing your opinion, but it is connected to the state's coercive power. So when you have women in politics who are contributing to how much force and what kind of power is used, you result in what? A dysfunctional society, because that is not the realm of women. So women have a great place in society. They are indispensable. Seriously, women are so important in society. And I'll never want to diminish that. Although we rag on feminism and the tendencies of women. But we love women. But the thing is, their greatest contribution comes through the family and community rather than electoral politics. We've said this before. Their desire for inclusion and being welcoming, that's a really great thing. But it works for your community barbecue. It works for your community cookout. It works for your family or play dates. It doesn't scale to governmental politics and electoral politics. It doesn't scale to society writ large because it's destructive if you want to welcome the entire world into your country. So you have to understand, politics is the collective exercise of violence, of force. It is a combative role. It is not a non-combative role. And this is why Amy Coney Barrett, she thought that she could come into this role and say, and be all safe and things be peaceful, and she's shocked that she has to wear a bulletproof vest. No, like that's the times that we live in, and that's always has been the nature of politics, really. It has been violent, it has been risky, it's been dangerous. A woman were not meant for that, and that's okay. That's okay. It doesn't make you a lesser human being. It just makes you different. It makes us different, and that's okay. So Amy Coney Barrett, what you should do is to step down, because you cannot be a good mother of 7 children while being a Supreme Court justice. It is just not feasible. You can't. Either you're going to be a bad mother and a good justice, or a bad justice and a good mother. But I would argue, and I would posit that as a woman, it is very, very rare that you'll have a good, sound, impartial female judge. So what you actually end up doing in the case of Amy Coney Barrett is you have a bad judge and a bad mother. And so what she needs to do is she needs to step down if this is too dangerous. And I honestly think it's a bad thing. Like, of course, we need to increase security for her, and we need to crack down on left-wing terrorists and violence. Of course, that's all needed. We talk about that all the time on this program. But for her, like, what's more important than her being a Supreme Court justice is being a good mother. The moral influence and the leadership that she has over her children, that is infinitely more important than what she'll do. And her adjudicating from the bench, she's been ruling against conservatives half of the time anyways. So what we need to do is she needs to step down, and we need a new Clarence level, literally a Clarence Thomas level justice to step up, who will not give in to bullies and will say no and not allow left-wing terrorists to get their way. And that's what we need to do, because I deeply cherish and I care for women. I actually don't like when women are brutalized and women are put in positions of, where they're in danger. Like, that's not where women should be. Women should be mainly to the home, but also building their own community, their local community. That's where the strength is. And think about it. The deterioration of social cohesion just everything has been worsening in every single social like aspect in America, and that is due to women's direct civic engagement in politics. Because now instead of having that energy be right focused in their local community to build vibrant, rich, welcoming local communities, now they're outsourcing all of that empathy, that warmth, those emotions into catering for third world migrants or the left-wing terrorists who end up getting killed by ICE. Again, like women cannot, aside from their initial emotions in that moment, they don't understand second-order causes and effects. And that's not a bad thing, but we have to have a serious conversation about how men and women are different. And if men and women are different, then we serve different roles and functions in society. But by propelling women to be in traditionally masculine roles, what you end up doing is you actually tear down the relationships we have between men and women, where they used to be complementary, now they're competitive. Now men and women are competing against one another and fighting against one another instead of supporting one another, where men are leading women, protecting women, and women are supporting and being the helpmate of men. That's how it's always been, and that's our ancestors understood this. Everyone in all of civilization understood this. And for some reason, because the modern zeitgeist rewards worshiping the god and idol of egalitarianism, somehow saying this is misogynistic and hateful. Like, no, I'm not misogynistic. I don't hate women. I love women. I do. So that is our segment on Amy Coney Barrett. I really do hope that she's safe, that her family's safe, and we crack down on left-wing terrorism. But women should not be judges. They're not meant to be judges and politicians in politics because God did not design them for it. It is not in their psychology nor their physiology, and that's okay. It doesn't make them any lesser. We're just different. And I want to move towards a society where men and women do not compete against one another, don't fight against one another, but actually complement one another. And the only way we're going to achieve that complementary societal lifestyle again is if we first acknowledge, first and foremost, that men and women are different. We must. And that is the existential fight right now for male-female relations in America, all across the first world. And so, yeah, that's Amy Coney Barrett. We're moving on to our next segment. So all our next segments will be shorter. That was our headline news story, Amy Coney Barrett, because I think it's very important to talk about the nature of male-female relations, because that is the bedrock, right? The family is the bedrock of civilization. And so we want men and women to get along, get married, have children. So that's like literally the most important thing ever, really.